It's not a bird, it's not a plane, it's Superhero Slate. It's a modern podcast where we talk about everything that's great, like movies, TV, superheroes. It's Superhero Slate. Oh yeah.
Hello everyone and welcome to Superhero Slate, the show where we run down the latest superhero entertainment news.
We love TV, movies, and superheroes, so let's talk it all out.
My name is Chris Dillard.
And my name is Mike Royer.
And welcome to the official Superhero Slate review of Thor, Love and Thunder. He's dropped in theaters. He's back.
From outer space, I suppose. Though he's always been there.
Yeah.
I don't know.
he's always been spacey and out there. Yeah, I'll give you that. I was going to say, and you're the mighty Mike Royer, but you are the real Mike Royer. Welcome back to the show. You took a week off. And you literally just got back in time to watch Thor, Love and Thunder and get on here. So I appreciate that, Mike. Thank you.
Yeah. Luckily, we just came back from vacation. Maybe talk about it a little bit more on our normal weekly news recap episode, which you got to stay tuned, stay subscribed, and that should be in your feed, well, literally as you're listening to this. But yeah, we just came back from Ireland, which is in a totally different time zone than Southern California.
Yep.
So my internal clock is wacky, and we were trying to figure out, am I going to be able to, watch this movie by the time we record this week's episode? Well, as luck would have it, I crashed super hard last night when we finally got off the plane after our flight, and woke up at like 7 a.m. like totally refreshed, which doesn't usually happen. I know 7 a.m. sounds like very normal for most people in whatever time zones that they're in, but I was up for like 30 plus hours traveling.
Right.
So woke up at 7 a.m. and I was like, hey, honey, there's a showing at 9 a.m. for Thor. You want to go watch it? We still have 2 hours to get ready for it, basically. So it worked out well, and I was pretty impressed that it wasn't super easy to get really nice seats on a Sunday morning for Thor. Yeah, there was like a 9:15, and like 10 a.m. And I was like, then the 9:15, I don't like that smaller theater. The 10, there's not really any good seats that I like in that one. I guess we're going for the 9 a.m.
Nice.
So that you can say at the very least that there is a demand, unsurprisingly, for a Taika Waititi, Chris Hemsworth brand new movie.
I cannot fathom a movie theater being open at 9 o'clock on a Sunday in my part of the country. So I know that's like part of the, I guess,
the soulless Southern California.
Yeah, like LA
churchless population not going to church on Sundays.
Well, I mean, your religion could be Marvel, or it could be
well, hey, with the time slot
Asgardian
that I just said, like we got out around like 11. So if you're a church-going person by chance, you might be able to catch it in the morning and then go to a sermon, which is a very weird double booking, right? A whole movie about killing gods, and then you go to church right afterwards. I guess maybe that's your penance if you feel like you need to.
And maybe you could see your personal God in this movie. I'm sitting here, honestly, I just want to give kudos to you. I'm sitting here looking at our thumbnail on the video as I record this, and by God, you've nailed the visualness of this movie here in one go, with all the colors, and then the 80s. It kind of looks like that word art style here in the word review that's got like the silver top half and the gradient on the bottom.
80s retro gradients. Yeah, it's not really a spoiler necessarily to talk about the visual style of like the end credits of movies, but they do ape the 80s aesthetic, just like they do in the logo in the kind of rolling credits, which I just kept thinking, these names look really cool in all of these like 80s metal albums fonts, and it just made me think like maybe that's the whole reason they made this movie, so like Kevin Feige could like take a screenshot of his name and that like electric guitar style, so he could just like put it at his as his like business card. It's the whole reason for the movie. It's just vanity business cards.
And I don't think he needs to take a screenshot, but he definitely did. They probably made this movie backwards, started with the credits, and then like how can we tie a movie to these awesome credits? But 80s are back. If Stranger Things just got off the air, Thor, Love and Thunder, the 80s are making a comeback 40 years later. So I'm gonna jump into this. I saw mine on Thursday, so I'm sitting on this like 4 days later. You're a fresh newbie, plucked right off the vine of this movie, and I will tell you, I went to the IMAX theater, which I normally go to for all my Marvel movies, down the road. It's a little bit of a travel for me. Not horrible, but still, like, I literally live across the street from another theater I could go to. And this was the first time ever in the history of going to this theater, because it's IMAX, I'm like, maybe the IMAX screen isn't worth it. And it's not the movie's fault. I'm just going to say the local AMC theater I go to has not updated their seats in probably 30 years. Maybe since the 80s. Hell, I don't know. And it was like the first time I'm like, man, I'm like cramped in here in like a stadium style seating. I don't need the recliners, but by God, I love the space of reclining, the recliners in the other theaters. And I'm like, maybe possibly going forward, I may forego the IMAX experience for an upgraded movie theater that has better audio and seating to watch. And I never really thought about that.
As you get older, just like Chris Hemsworth in these roles, right? You want more creature comforts in life than seeing it on a gigantic screen.
Yeah. So other than that, the AMC also has a reformed Mjolnir popcorn vessel. Remember my doctor? They actually had people going in and buying them early in the day and then selling them on eBay. So AMC put out like a pre-order for like their official ones to kind of combat that. It looked pretty cool. I didn't see how it would hold popcorn, but I'm like, well, I kind of wish.
I'm looking it up right now because I'm trying. Oh, I see. So it's imagine Mjolnir, just setting on the ground, handle facing upright, and then the handle plus the bottom kind of portion of the hammer lifts up.
It's like a lid.
It's kind of like when you saw those like Thor hammer like toolboxes back in the day. That's kind of what it reminds me of. But,
It's made also out of tin and plastic rather than just the plastic one, because you can see that Doctor Strange one, and it's very plasticky behind it.
Yeah, I mean, it looks nice. I mean, I wouldn't exactly say it's like a show-stopping piece, but for something you put popcorn in, it looks pretty decent.
And so I mean, that's my new home theater go-to is just getting popcorn vessels and decking out my theater and things that would hold popcorn. The other thing I don't know what theater had this, but they actually turned Reformed Mjolnir into a cup holder where you hold the stick and it opens up and it's just like a holder for your cup at the top. I'm like, how many people mess this up? But what a lovely prop to turn into the stuff.
This is the problem with Stormbreaker, right? You just can't envision it as an item that you could put popcorn in. That's the biggest problem with it. Yep. You could maybe sell it as an axe itself. You could cut up your generous deli meats for sandwiches, but I don't know what much. We did get an extra use for Stormbreaker in this movie. No spoilers yet at the top of the show, but it seems to be a vehicle in some way.
Yep. And so we'll talk about that. So other than you going at 9 a.m. and me, starting to rethink my choices in life of movie theater patronage, anything else before we kind of jump into this? Because we've barely talked. I let Mike have his vacation, didn't bother him with worldly things, and you ready to jump into this?
Yeah, let's share some spoiler-free thoughts on Thor: Love and Thunder.
So who's going first here? Who wants to do it? You?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and drop it first since it's still a little fresh in my mind.
Go for it.
So Thor: Love and Thunder. Just a very, very quick recap of the last time we saw Taika Waititi take on Thor Ragnarok, and we have this in our archives. You can go back and listen to our review of Thor Ragnarok. And overall, I thought it was a really positive experience to see Taika Waititi kind of almost like taking the piss a little bit out of the grandioseness of Chris Hemsworth and him being a god, making him a little bit more of a oafish character for comedic relief. Mm-hmm. But I remember one of the negative things I did not like about Thor Ragnarok is I thought just maybe one or two times too many did the comedic punchline kind of take the wind out of the drama of the movie, which is not necessarily saying every Marvel movie needs to be dramatic, right? But you want your big serious moments to really hit and sink in so you can like really, really connect to your characters. And unfortunately, I feel like the problem only got worse for me in Thor: Love and Thunder. And after leaving the movie, I was just thinking, well, how did I feel about this film? And I think the best way I can sum it up is, unfortunately, I just liked it. I didn't love it, which is kind of hard for me to say because I think a lot of people out there who are fans of the MCU and just fans of good even television at the moment are big fans of Taika Waititi. I mean, his career is kind of blowing up right now. He's producing, what is it? Our Flag Means Death.
Which got a season 2 for him.
Yes, he's also on What We Do in the Shadows and Reservation Dogs, which are all really, really great shows.
And he's got a Star Wars movie coming too.
Exactly. So he is taken off. He's doing a lot of great stuff. And I think we all had really, really high expectations for Love and Thunder because that was almost the common ground for just movie fans and also MCU fans. Ragnarok was up there. Sometimes it was people's number one. If they weren't really hugely connected to the MCU, it was at least usually in the top 3. So I think rightfully so, we went in with high expectations. I kind of fell short for me, unfortunately. So that's kind of where I'm sitting right now. I think I'll be able to maybe dissect it a little bit more once we jump into spoilers and we can talk about the different story beats and moments. But I'm feeling I'm left a little disappointed, which maybe when we talk about it today, it might sound like I didn't like the movie once we start talking about it. But unfortunately, I wish that's not where I was right now. But Chris, what did you think?
I would say it's just a movie. At the end of the day, like literally, I was sitting there watching this. The opening of this movie and the ending of this movie are probably some of the best scenes in Marvel, right? 100%. Some of the most touching, some of the most emotional. However, very early on, I'm like, God, this is just a popcorn movie. Like, I can literally kick my legs up, throw popcorn in my mouth, and watch this movie and laugh at it. And that's really all a lot of the middle of it is at the end of the day. And that's not a bad thing. I applaud Marvel for taking a genre approach for each movie rather than having the same genre for every movie. And honestly, with all the heaviness we've had lately from Spider-Man, Doctor Strange, Moon Knight, it's been a little heavy, right? Everything's kind of been heavy. So I feel I applaud them for doing, literally, this is a comedy film, a comedy action film at the end of the day. And it's what I appreciated about it as well. It's very brisk. They don't make you linger on anything. They're like, yep, right, next thing, moving along. And that's part of the a comedy aspect, right? You don't linger on things in comedies. The action scenes are fantastic. I think as well when you do get them. I think they're great. This does dive into, I believe, the lore of Marvel, bring comic lore into the MCU a little not heavier. In a much bigger regard, but at the end of the day, doesn't really amount to anything. But so I think I don't want to come down on it. I'm not coming down. I think it's a fun movie. It's a very fun movie, but does it really do anything at the end of the day is kind of where I'm trying to think. And like, what are the implications of this film? And are there any? So like I'm like because it's just a romp, and then it's a fun romp, but does everything need to be, cosmos, reality, ending results? And this, it feels like, with, we know it's Gore the God Butcher, it was a more personal vendetta rather than like, hey, I want to kill all the universe. I want to destroy all of realities. It felt more personal, and, I kind of feel that was I appreciated that a little bit more, that, hey, we don't have to get... we don't have to get everyone involved, but it's a very brisk movie, so I like that.
Yeah, I feel like the concepts, like if you were to sit down when the story is being broken, or if you had a chance to meet the writer when they kind of turned in their first draft, like all of the concepts in the film are great. I love it on paper. It just felt like the execution, which, do you place that on Taika? Do you place that on like Feige, a producer? What exactly is happening here? It's hard to say, but to me, I'm starting to get the vibe of like, we're not mad, we're just disappointed.
Right. Well, there's after the success of Ragnarok, you expect something to build on that, right? And it's kind of like watching a sequel that does the same things again. Like this is Iron Man 2 to Iron Man 1. Like Ragnarok is Iron Man 1, and this is Iron Man 2. Iron Man 2 is not bad, but it didn't really push the envelope, did it? It was like the same thing again-ish. I will say Thor has a villain problem in every one of his movies, right? If you're white and British, 3 of them are men, 1's woman, you're probably a villain in a Thor movie, and you're probably not gonna really get the I guess the chance you deserve. Now, I'll put an asterisk beside Loki. He was able to bring himself into the Avengers and make himself something more. But like in the first Thor outing, he's not that impressive at the end of the day. So yeah, I think again it's bookended by beautiful, very touching scenes. But in the middle, it feels to me like a little bit about watching What We Do in the Shadows and Our Flag Means Death. Right? It's just a fun kind of, I guess skewering of genres, but nothing too serious, if you will. I do want to say 2 things to your thing before we get into this. I feel there is a lot of scenes on the cutting room floor to make a 2-hour runtime, because I told this to a listener of the show, Patrick, earlier today. We were texting about it, I believe last night. I think Marvel is gun shy to do a 2.5-hour movie after Eternals. And this movie was filmed during Eternals. Feels like there's a lot more there that we just didn't get to see, and was kind of removed for, I guess, like I said, for lack of a better, briskness again. Like, we got to get to 2 hours, take out anything you can, keep the story cohesive, but like I think there's stuff there on the floor. And in our daily notes, I don't have it down here. I believe there's like 4 hours of footage for the movie. Like the quote unquote the first version Taika turned in was 4 hours. I don't need to see a director's cut, but it would be interesting to know, what's left there. Like,
Yeah, I think I saw a headline where Taika he's not really into director's cuts in general, so there's not going to be probably a longer version of this movie that he's, clamoring to get out there. So it seems like he is okay and probably very proud of what he put out.
Yeah. And let me say, one of the applauses here, much like your thumbnail, this is Thor, Ragnarok, and Love and Thunder are pushing the boundaries of visuals in the MCU. Probably I'd say even a little farther than Doctor Strange does, in terms of everything they do, right? We have, again, the Bifrost we know about. God damn, I love these war goats that he's got along the way. The intro scene, we've seen the trailer, him with the Guardians of the Galaxy, visually impressive. I think there's a lot of great visuals in here, and this is just kind of pushing it a little further.
Yeah. I would say not to confuse it with, because I know there's a bit of a narrative floating around out there on social media of like the quality of VFX when it comes to Marvel movies, but I think I like what you're saying when it comes to like the art direction specifically, like the opening scene, which we won't spoil anything yet. There's a villain that they're fighting that almost looks kind of like a weird, maybe like puppet type creature. I don't know if it's the way it's rendered or maybe also the way it's animated. But
I think
really
it's real.
Cool.
I think it's real. I think it's actually an animatronic or an outfit kind of thing.
Yeah, whether it is or not, they're fooling us, and it's working. Yeah. And it's working well. And then also a bit that we do get to see in the trailer is kind of like the quote unquote like black and white planet, which I think plays really really well visually. So I do like whenever we get a chance to see a Marvel movie, I guess step outside of itself a little bit, and we do get some of that. In this.
Yeah, and we also see the God City when you get to see the details of the God City. I think there's a lot in there that when this releases or a high quality version comes out, people will be literally zooming in on frames of this for a very long time. But it looks amazing. Like it just kind of brought it to life. So last bit here, Mike, box office before we dive into this. 302 million worldwide this weekend, huge numbers. Already a third of the way to $1 billion. People are going and seeing it. I think. Even if you're not an MCU person, you've got Natalie Portman jacked as hell. You've got Chris Hemsworth butt-ass naked. We saw that from the trailers. So I think that alone could get people get butts in seats, if you will. Clothed butts in seats, hopefully. And, you don't need to know everything about Marvel to watch this movie.
Well, and also the pedigree that is Thor, one of the last remaining core Avengers left alive / actors, in it. So he has the highest, probably name identity right now, maybe outside of like Spider-Man or something when it comes to like this legacy of movies. So I think no one was surprised that it made money and it was going to make money. No one was in disbelief there.
No, not at all. And it was the biggest Thursday this year so far, and I was like, that's surprising because Batman and Doctor Strange were out. So people are lining the theaters to go see this. So good for it. I mean, we want every movie to succeed except Morbius. So that's our motto for this year. So let's jump in to spoilers, Mike, and everything else in between.
Yes, I think I would like to talk about, just started off on a bad note, I guess.
Yeah.
I think the single worst pinpointed thing about this film is, to me, the whole narrative relies on the relationship and the love in the title, Love and Thunder, that Thor has for Jane Foster, and they have negative chemistry in this entire film. I never once thought that these two characters cared for each other at all. And I don't know if that's just because they've never really connected all that much, and Jane Foster has kind of been forgotten and left to the wayside in the MCU, so we just never really got to see that development. Or if it's just the overly comedic and sarcastic tone that is pervasive in everything in this film. So like even when they were like emotionally connecting and stuff, everything felt just like a joke. So when the whole movie hinges on this love, and even when she dies at the end of the movie, like I did not even feel it for a second. So I just do not understand why the movie was built around it at all. That felt like the biggest mistake to me.
I'm gonna actually parry you with a bigger mistake.
Ooh, ching ching ching.
His name is Gore the God Butcher. Ooh. We saw him butcher a god. In the first 5 minutes of the movie, literally didn't see him kill another god.
I know, it all happened on a monitor in the Milano spaceship.
Yeah, we got Sif back. He dismembered, Sif. However, literally, if you're going to get Christian Bale and call him Gore the God Butcher, which they do reference him in the movie that way, at least show and kill him some gods.
What an amazing shot of just dead corpses.
Yeah.
That we didn't get to see anything happen with.
Yeah. So I think, I agree the chemistry's not there, but I do appreciate the end of the film says that it's Love and Thunder. Love is the girl, and he's the thunder, right? I think that was a very fun little reference for them to be at. I want to know what her powers are. But I'm gonna go back to the beginning of the film and say Moon Knight and Miss Marvel are in the opening logo, Mike. Little Easter egg.
Okay.
I caught Moon Knight. I didn't see Miss Marvel, but that's the articles I've seen. So they are updating these logos literally as the shows are airing. So which of course they're not making this the day before, but that's great. They have it in there.
I want to see that After Effects project file.
Yeah.
Right. Do they just like go into like the instance and be like, all right, replace this clip with that clip. Okay, now re-render the logo. Get it going.
Yeah. Well, and if they do, that's fine. I think it's really, really cool that they did that. It's a little fun Easter egg. Again, I think the intro scene of Gore and losing his daughter on this dry desert planet and running into the gods, which have become parodies compared to superheroes, which was a point Zeus made later on. Was I mean, I wouldn't say touching. It was devastating to see him lose his child and then find out your gods are just here to make fun of you. You drink wine and be merry. So I hope that's not the last we see of the Necro Sword, but I do think the intro was great, and the outro with again Thor being the uncle to Gore's revived daughter was really touching. I think the bookends are fantastic, but the journey to get there was rough.
Yeah, I loved how the movie ended, because I like how now where do we take Thor, right? After this one of many adventures that he's been on the MCU, we need to keep evolving his character, right? And I love that this new version of him is basically going to be paying like a fatherly role. It's something we haven't really seen him to, and it kind of forces him to grow up a little bit. And talk about all of the homage it pays to like this daughter, the relationship that she shares with like how Loki was raised, right? And even Thor's, maybe even his own issues with his father growing up, like with power. So I feel like there's a whole lot to build on here, right? And I feel like there's so much there, like that should have almost been the core of the movie, in my opinion. You know, I'm not necessarily saying, oh, in the first act, Thor needs to be like begging Jane to have a kid, and that's the reason they broke up, because, you know, he wouldn't give her, you know, a child or an offspring. But, like, you know, maybe like if they were more interested in like, oh, I'm Thor, what's missing in my life, you know, it's not necessarily it's a woman, you know, it's somebody, it's about my legacy, it's about growing up. And that kind of leans into just like the story problems as well. Is what was the story of this movie? Unfortunately, they kind of started as when Thor is kind of deciding to leave the Guardians, it's because like what was it again?
He doesn't have purpose. He wants to feel shitty, and boy did they nail that, like saying shitty quite a few times in this movie.
Like he was like trying to like find himself or something, and then by the end of the movie, the answer was him getting a daughter. That was the purpose, but that happened at the very last second. It's not like we were building up to that. It was almost like, oh, twist, you have like a kid now, surprise.
The point was it is better to have loved and lost than never to have loved at all, I think. And then he, you know, reconnected with Jane, even though you don't feel that in the movie. And you know, he lost Jane, but like at the same time, like, you know, he did that in return by loving Jane. He was able to convince Gore not to kill all the gods. So
it felt kind of weird to bring Sif back, who we thought was kind of going to be maybe the other part of a supposed love triangle. Maybe there could have been another
you know what?
love interest as well.
Fake out the love triangles between Thor, Mjolnir, and Stormbreaker.
I do think the concept of that was funny. Like, that's the thing. That is a really funny joke. Like, if I was just sitting down chatting with you, other people about Thor, like, oh, wouldn't that be so funny? You know, if there was like, you know, Stormbreaker was getting upset because Mjolnir was back. But like, to be at such a pivotal point in the movie was just very strange.
Well, to me, it's a great visual gag, right? It's all that came out to be a Stormbreaker is jealous, and honestly, I kind of got a little bit of that because like half of Stormbreaker is Groot, like a teenage Groot, so of course it's like emotionally unstable, and it's like, I want to be your only hammer. It's fine. But it's a great visual gag, right? To like when like Stormbreaker's like creeping in the back frame on some of those, like I was like, that's pretty funny. Like it's got its own personality because it's been imbued with magic and all this other fun stuff. I think, you know, some people may agree or disagree. I love the screaming goats. And the highlight of them is them screaming as they run into that planet, which I thought was a lot farther away than it was. I'm like, oh, that planet's in the distance. They're going to swoop down and find him. No, that planet was literally right there, and they just smashed right into it, and like the goat started screaming. I just love it. And I don't know why I love it. It's not a good joke. But maybe it's because my parents have over 100 goats at their house currently.
That's the thing. You're a very specific target audience for this movie. You have the goat backstory with you.
And so I'm like, oh, I totally get screaming goats just like being stupid. Like, they'll follow food and bright shiny things, and like that's exactly what goats are. They are just obnoxious. So thought that was funny. I also enjoyed the Guardians are literally trying to get rid of Thor. They're like, we just want to get rid of you, kind of thing. Like, we're tired of, you know, almost losing battles and you coming in and winning at the end. Those chicken things were pretty cool, though. I think those were fully puppets, like or at least people in suits.
Yeah, they were very strange. And we were right when we were talking about this movie and its trailers coming up. We think we both agreed. Okay, the Guardians are not going to be in this movie that much. This very much feels like they are front loading the trailer with familiar faces, and we're going to be moving on to more of a Thor story. I thought maybe they might show up Deus Ex Machina style in the third act, but that wasn't the case. Especially when he was talking about like, oh, we need like we need backup. We need to go get backup, and I guess the Guardians were technically busy across the world. I'm sure Captain Marvel was involved out there as well too, because that's apparently what happens when these space heroes are too busy to help, is because they're on another planet with somebody else. I think one thing I actually really liked about the movie, it just felt kind of wasted like Gore, was Russell Crowe's interpretation of Zeus, which he put on. He used this very weird Greek accent, but I just kind of loved everything about the characterization. Like when he would step down from his like little pedestal, he grabbed his like little skirt thing. He was doing like weird karate moves with the light bulb.
Yeah, he was like very flamboyant about it, if you will. Like, like Russell Crowe, you think, Gladiator, serious Oscar-winning movies, and he's up here just like, nah, fuck it. Like, I've got a bad accent. I'm going to use the word orgy in the Marvel for the first time, and keep saying it.
When the film was over and people were starting to walk out, I leaned over to my wife and I was like, "Oh, do you see all these kids in the movie theater?" And she was like, "Yeah." She was like, "All of these parents are going to have to explain to their kids what an orgy is as they walk out." It's like, "Oh, it's just a party for adults." But the thing is, the Russell Crowe Zeus character kind of embodies like the pros and the cons of this movie pretty well as like one character. Is like you do bring in like this very specific like Taika Waititi, humor and kind of these very interesting characters that you can't even explain until you watch them, these performances that they get to choose. I don't know if Taika gives into this or like Russell Crowe's just like, oh, I'm just going to do something weird, this is going to be fun. But then at the same time, it doesn't really amount to much, right? No. I thought this was going to be such a more pivotal moment in the film, right? Wow, they're going to like this, I guess what is essentially like a god planet, all these gods are hanging out. I thought we were building like this really interesting narrative of just like, I'm kind of on Gore's side here. All of these dudes are assholes. They kind of deserve to die. I thought like maybe Gore might sneak in, kill some people. It might be a massacre. Maybe these shadow puppets were going to be all over the place. And I think I saw somebody online say, so I won't take credit even though this isn't like an original term, but it just kind of felt like a fetch quest. We were just going to get this lightning bolt which could honestly, it could have been anything. It didn't have to be Zeus's lightning bolt. They could have just wrote any sort of like MacGuffin weapon to defeat the other MacGuffin weapon out there, the Necro sword. So I was like, I wish this amounted to more than just an after credit scene where we get to see Roy Kent from Ted Lasso.
I was gonna say, but that's the point of. I mean, the point of it was to prove that Gore is right. The gods are fat, lazy, and they don't care about their people. You even said you agree with that. Like they nailed the message, but they literally could have done that anywhere else. But that you get Brett Goldstein as Hercules, who is an Avenger. Actually, he's been in the Avengers for years in the comic books, so that's fantastic to see. He's a real man. He's not CGI, folks. No matter what you people on Ted Lasso think. I think that's a fun little cameo. I mean, like you said, we've heard rumors he's been in MCU for a couple weeks now, maybe a couple months, and we were like, well, where's he going to be? Maybe they'll announce it at Comic-Con. Nope, right here. Boom, we get that. I do think, the God thing. I'm going to go back. I want to see the God things. I think it's interesting. The Black Panther God was in front of them. I don't know if you saw that the whole time.
No, I was. I was trying to scan a little bit, trying to figure out what was there. Unfortunately, I was a little distracted by the bow God, the steam dumpling. That felt like a step too far in my opinion, because I was like, what is this seems like what is this, like a Wreck-It Ralph cameo or something like that? Is this like a Pixar movie? It's just an instance of just like, I don't know. I brought this up a little bit when we talked about our review of Peacemaker, right? When you give a project to a creator that they get almost universal control over because they've already built up so much goodwill with the studio and the audience, that nobody out there is like telling them to rein it in or tone it down a little bit. And maybe nobody thinks it needs to happen, right? If you're a producer, an executive in charge of making this movie, Taika Waititi has been knocking it out of the park left and right in Hollywood. Why would I ever say anything? He must know what he's talking about. But like, I feel like somebody should have been like, you literally put a cartoon character in this scene. Do we think this is going to be a little distracting? Some people might not think so, and that's fine. But I was kind of taken out of that scene of just who's next? Like Heathcliff the cat? Is he going to be like sitting on a chair or something around the corner?
You're 100% right. There's a billion other gods they could use rather than a bow dumpling. However, I think my complaint of this whole omnipotent city is all these almost feel like human gods. Like we have aliens and other people out there. We've seen that in other movies. Where are those gods? Everyone's like a dumpling. Well, that's a human dumpling, obviously. Zeus, the leader of all the gods, is a human god. It felt like there was a little more lenience on that. Now we did see in front of them an Aztec looking god. I'm like, is this is this tying into Namor? Is this an Aquaman or not Aquaman? An Atlantis reference kind of thing after some stuff we talked about. Yeah. But
and also we were talking about. I was hoping that this film would maybe answer some of my just overall general kind of just like lore questions in the MCU and what they're building up to, because I've always been kind of questioning, where does Asgard and Midgard and the realms kind of fit within the cosmic universe and like dimensions. And they even say like they say Shadow Realm, right? Yeah. That's like, I think that's the term for where Gore is like staging his trap, right? So we're getting a lot of these like vague terms that nothing really clarifies. So it goes the same with like the gods, right? Does every visual representation of a creature in the galaxy get an adjacent looking god, right? Because Gore had like a very specific kind of like ritualistic religious look, right? He kind of had like these scars, the like bands that went down by his eyes. They were very stringent followers to this god that when they eventually met him in that oasis didn't really look anything like him. So they just, I know like Taika is not the type of creator that's going to set up all this lore and rules. He's just out there looking for entertainment and some fun and humor and jokes. But like, we are building a cinematic universe here. I think we need to clear some of this up a little bit, right? Especially since we might be seeing like this God storyline, kind of come back around, right? And everybody was like speculating, oh, is Moon Knight gonna tee up into this in any given way? It didn't. It didn't at all.
Well, I mean, honestly, there could be gods in there, but it's not a direct connection, right? Like the Moon Knight gods could be in there somewhere in the background. Now, I will say, I think I will disagree. I think some of this, I mean, they don't need to. Everything doesn't need to build onto a universe. The people don't need. I don't think the intro god and him not looking like it ties into it. But we did get to see some of the bigger stuff, some little seeds along the way. We got to see 2 Celestials, which we talked about a little bit in the trailer, right? Those don't seem to be the Celestials from anything that we saw in the Eternals, based on visuals. I've been kind of cross-referencing Celestial designs. I'm like, these look like maybe garden keepers or like people like other Celestials, not like Eson the Searcher kind of dude. So
and size wise too, I think garden size, like they could be the Celestials' garden gnomes, like based on the dimensions that they are.
Well, yeah, they could be. I think they were a little scale. When I was watching it, I'm like, oh, when the ship gets closer, they look more realistic in Celestial size. And at the end, apparently at the center of the universe, we get to find Eternity, which is a concept god of Marvel, but also we see some other cosmic beings in the background, the statues, right? We get to see Death, Eon, Infinity, the Living Tribunal, which is the 3rd instance of the Living Tribunal, by the way, which makes me think something's coming with him, and Uatu, the Watcher from the What If series. And it also looked like literally Eson the Searcher, that he had like his head maybe with green eyes fell over on the kids, right? So I think there's a bigger Celestial there, maybe the original Celestial. So they're laying these seeds. They're giving us Eternity, which people thought Eternity was in Guardians 2, in Peter Quill's eyes, like whenever he was looking in space or whatever. So it's interesting that there was not Galactus. Now, for a split second, I thought there was Galactus. Mike, did you think that?
Yeah, there was kind of like those similar kind of angle. I guess they're not horns, but a helmet silhouette. Yeah. So
the Jack Kirby design.
Yeah, it does make me wonder if they're just trying to like just warm the audience up to the eventually, right? Like, maybe Feige has the idea of, we're going to get to Galactus at some point in time. So, if we kind of want to hint, maybe kind of put some similar visual designs in there, that might be okay.
And, well, Eternity also has a very similar look to Galactus with some of those helmet horn things like he does. Like, they're not right angles, like 45-degree kind of angles. So I think it was like, hey, wink, wink. We know what you're thinking. Like, we're going to mess with you. But obviously, at the end of it, it is Eternity. So I think my other complaint with that would be, why is it the Bifrost that opens Eternity? Like, it's a very Asgardian thing. What was the specialness about it? Why is it the secret of all?
Yeah, and it was just like, this is such a big key that lets you into this wish. It's like the Dragon Balls, right? Get whatever you want. And I just kept thinking, well, this would be a lot easier for Thanos to achieve than getting all of these Infinity Stones that are protected by some of the most powerful people in the universe, right? Well, just go take Thor's hammer when he's like drunk or sleeping or something and just like open up this. So I just don't understand like why it was privileged information. I guess it came to Gore in a vision after he picked up the Necro Sword, right?
They cut out a lot of, like, again, gore. Like, there's no gore in this movie, hardly at all. Like, other than him being creepy with children. So, I feel like that's on the cutting room floor because, like, all his drawings and stuff on that planet, I'm like, where did these come from? Like, what is he doing?
Is one thing that is making me a little bit uncomfortable when it comes to the cosmic side of Marvel. It just seems like they're looking at it as a playground where you can literally do anything you want and you don't really have to dream up a reason behind it. Oh, because it's just in space. We don't have time to go over it. And I felt like they had one too many things, right? Like the Necro Sword and the concept of a god butcher, right? You know, what wasn't really explained. We just had to take it as a fact that it existed. Yep. You know, that was fine. I'm okay with that. But to just add more and more on top of it, it was just making it more and more that we just have to stomach to get through the story.
They just needed to tell us what, like, other than them like Jane seeing drawings and be like, oh, we got to get there with the Bifrost. I'm like, could her research have said something like early on? Like, could they have, like, literally, the God Butcher is a title, not a thing, right? It's passed down from sword owner to sword owner. So there could have been some Thor even like an exposition dump, really, if they needed to.
I don't know if I don't remember if they said that this location was at the center of the universe or the end of the universe. Center. Either way, it seemed like the location wasn't even necessarily privileged. It was just the identity of the key. So they were just like, oh, we're trying to like find Gore, we're trying to like track him down, but everybody knows where this thing is. It's just the important story beats that I feel like if somebody really, really loved this movie and they were trying to defend it, they would just say like, why are you taking it so seriously? This is just a funny movie with like fun jokes in it. And I agree, there are funny jokes in it because Taika's good at making like funny moments on screen. Like I loved the beginning of the movie when Thor plants Stormbreaker and then he turns it into a witch's broom. That is so funny when he
the
flies
witch's broom
off
is pretty funny. Yeah,
when he flies off the back, that is hilarious. I love it. There's nothing wrong with that moment, and I'm glad the movie exists because we got to see that, right? But I feel like when you're building a movie in this huge cinematic universe, you know, where you're sharing all these components and parts are going to be passed off to other writers and directors, it just felt like nobody really cared too much about all that. We just wanted to have we just want to have fun in this sandbox and not really worry about the ramifications.
Well, but I'm going to say that's okay. I think, you know, the older movies that you only had the post-credit scenes to deal with, and that's fine. We don't get those anymore. I will say the first in-credit scene was, you know, obviously Hercules. The second was finding out Valhalla exists. When Jane disappeared, she went to Valhalla.
Was that a teaser for a Disney Plus series? Because that's what it felt like to me.
No, I think this might actually tie into the Eternals movie. Because like the energy when they disappeared and reappeared feels like that Eternals energy when they created the Eternals, when the Celestials did. So it could also just be like, hey, look, you know, we redeemed Heimdall in, you know, Ragnarok, and we had to kill him off in Endgame, but like, you know, here's a fun little send off to see Idris Elba return again.
Yeah. It was kind of to me it seemed like that they were trying to tease something, just because in my mind I think the fact that Jane Foster kind of disappeared in a similar dust that Odin died with, right? Yeah. Like I felt like that was enough for me, right? That was telling the audience that she had kind of transcended just a human death and passed on as a hero, and that was our moment. And I'm not to seem crass for, you know, death of a character, but we lost Heimdall a while ago in my head. Like I don't think I needed to see Heimdall in the afterlife, right? You know, we even got to see his like lineage pass on like through a kid. So I was like, okay, that's fine. That was enough for me. So it almost seems like maybe they're testing the waters with something, which would be kind of really high concept, right? A series or a story that deals with the afterlife. You know, The Good Place did it. Maybe they do it on Disney Plus. I don't know.
And I'm going to be a little less cynical and think like it's just like a fun send off. Like, hey, Natalie Portman, you know, thank God we got you back. Idris Elba, thank you for being here. move.
And you could have, and the proof of the pudding there is that it's in the second end credit scene, usually where they kind of just put, one-off
the
jokes,
pizza papa,
if you will.
He'll get you, Doctor Strange.
Yeah, exactly.
So exactly, and like it could be, and if they don't do anything with it, that's fine. If they do, even better. Just showing that, hey, they may be gone, but they're not lost, if you will, kind of thing. If they ever wanted to bring them back, but that's always an opportunity for universes collapsing and merging through that. The last two things I want to say here. One, the tour guide at Mjolnir is Daryl from the Team Thor shorts.
Is it?
Yeah,
oh, okay.
So that kind of canonizes those shorts a little bit, or at least that character.
That's funny.
So those were pretty silly Waititi things. And then I think the Infinity Cones is kind of an offensive ice cream place.
Yeah.
Because like this is a gauntlet and stones that killed half the people in the universe for 5 years.
This was another moment where I was like, this is a really funny joke. Mm-hmm. I love this idea of New Asgard being a tourist destination because it makes a lot of sense, right? It does feel like theoretically in this universe that this is what it would come down to. This place needs money. It needs some sort of purpose. And this is what happened.
Well, people coming back after 5 years would have known about all the the universal stuff. So like, oh, this is great to go see it.
Yeah, but it does not feel positive necessarily. Like the filming makes it seem kind of cynical, cash grab, almost like Tessa Thompson's Valkyrie was just putting up with it, almost like a means to an end, right? Like, oh, we just need to do this for a few more years until we have enough money to expand or maybe even buy the land around us or something like that. And also the whole idea of, the gods being awful and unredeemable. Felt like we had two storylines left out there that felt very unresolved for the audience. Like, I don't think New Asgard looks like a very fun place to live if you're an Asgardian. It might be a fun place to visit. And also you could see this as this could be an indictment from Waititi also, right? He is a native from New Zealand. And I'm sure he has very similar feelings when it comes to colonizers and tourists and whatnot. But yeah, it did feel weird. It was like a straight up Old Spice commercial that Tessa Thompson was doing, and then you do kind of feel like, oh, this New Asgard stuff. I think Valkyrie was wearing a jersey, like a New Asgard jersey. Yeah, that's 100% going to be in a gift shop soon, right? So very mixed messages from the tourist destination of Asgard.
I wouldn't even say it's mixed. I think that it's supposed to be tourist destinations do suck for the people who live there. But Asgardians, this is their, I guess, maybe it's been granted, a country in Norway. This is where you have to stay if you're Asgardian thing. I just think the Infinity Cones is a poor cash grab in that. And it does remind me, I think this might be the last thing, I did enjoy the return of Matt Damon, Luke Hemsworth, the Sam Neill, and obviously the introduction of Melissa McCarthy as Hela.
Oh yeah, I was like, oh man, who's gonna play Hela? It's got to be somebody. That was really funny. I liked that.
Yeah, I was like, oh yeah. I've heard rumors, I've seen set photos, but I spaced it until it got to it. I'm like, oh my gosh. And then there are obviously the people doing the sets behind, they're doing this every day for they're just walking across the thing to make Mjolnir fly across and blow up in the hands. It was so fun to see that. But I think at the end of the day, like I said, this movie, it's got great bookmarks, but the middle is just, it's not a good filling, but it is filling. We have seen a Marvel movie. We've got to experience it with Chris Hemsworth, who, again, gets better and better the more movies he does. I think, he was the biggest I've ever seen him, Mike. His arms were as big as I was, for sure. So I think this is it's a fun time, but at the end of the day, of the Phase 4 movies, it probably sits right in the middle of everything.
It kind of feels like ordering one of your favorite items at a restaurant, right? And they just don't make it quite right. It's still what you ordered, and you'll still eat it. And I like it. There's parts I liked, but the chef did not quite nail the execution at the end of the day. So maybe, if you were having to, adjust your tip, which I know you don't adjust the tip for the server based on, how well the chef cooked it. But maybe this is more of a 12% tip, not so much like a 20% tip on gratuity.
Well, to me, it's the Butterfinger situation. I love Butterfingers. They changed the recipe. I still like them, but I'm just not into it as much as I was.
Chris, this is why we do a podcast together, because you are the only person left on the planet that will acknowledge that the Butterfinger recipe has changed.
Yes, it's true.
Every time I see somebody doing like a candy taste test on YouTube, they never bring it up. That recipe changed by Ferrero Rocher, and I'm still upset, and I wasn't expecting that at the end of this.
Those bastards. All right, well, let's wrap this up, get on to our regularly scheduled news program. Mike, if people know what you're up to, where can they find you at, sir?
Yeah, they can find me at Mike Royer Design on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. You can read my webcomics at pickledcomics.com. Chris, if people want to catch up with you, where can they find you?
Find me on Twitter, Valdan, Valdan, or Instagram, Valdan87. People know more about the show, where we do our regularly scheduled news episode every week. And I don't know if we have any reviews coming up except for maybe San Diego Comic-Con in 2 weeks, which we're going to run down all that. Everybody's coming back. Love and Thunder was announced there 3 years ago, so we got it. Where can people find all that good stuff at?
Oh, well, if you're looking for the new Asgardian headquarters of Superhero Slate, we have not moved. We are still where we've always been at superheroslate.com. You can get our awesome show notes over there and see our upcoming release calendar. I think maybe what's DC Super Pets, if we end up doing a spoiler cast for there, we got that on our upcoming release calendar. If you want to see a nice itemized list of everything that has come out and is coming out, you can find us on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, wherever else you love to listen to fine podcasts. You can like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter and Instagram. You can get merch at superheroslate.com/store. What did you think of Thor, Love and Thunder? Reach out to us and let us know what your thoughts. Where do you think the franchise is going? How do you think everything's going in the MCU? I've seen some up and down opinions of this new phase of MCU, which has been successfully kicked off, as in we've had quite a few additions to Phase 4. So how's it going? Let us know what temperature you're pulling for the MCU in this phase. And we love our super fans. So if you want to be a super fan of this show, all you got to do is share the show with a friend, share the show with a buddy, and we will be here every week, folks.
That's right. We'll catch you next week.
Bye.
Thanks for listening, and don't forget to subscribe.